Imagine this. It's the morning after GE 2025. The headlines read, "Opposition Victory, Singapore heads into a new political era." For the first time in decades, Singapore's ruling party is no longer in full control. It's not just a power shift, it's a political earthquake. But what would really happen if the opposition wins big in GE 2025? Stay with me, because what comes next could reshape Singapore's future at every level. The shockwave begins. For over half a century, Singapore's political landscape has been dominated by one party, the People's Action Party, or PAP. They've steered the nation from a small, struggling port city to a global financial powerhouse. The PAP's influence isn't just political, it's cultural. Their policies have shaped everything from the economy to the national identity, and for many, the idea of a different party leading Singapore seems almost unthinkable. But as the years have passed, the landscape has begun to shift. The voices of the opposition, once considered fringe, are growing louder. People are waking up to new realities: rising living costs, sky-high property prices, and an aging population that feels like it's being left behind. These issues have sparked a generational change in the electorate. Think about it. Young Singaporeans who've only known the PAP's rule are starting to question whether the same old policies are still serving them. They're frustrated with the pace of change and are looking for a fresh perspective. And they're not alone. Older generations, once loyal to the PAP for their stable, efficient governance, are beginning to feel the strain of economic pressures. In this climate, opposition parties like the Workers' Party, WP, and the Progress Singapore Party, PSP, have seized the moment. These parties are no longer just talking about issues, they're offering solutions. They're tapping into the discontent of everyday Singaporeans, from those struggling with housing affordability to those concerned about the rising costs of healthcare and education. The calls for more accountability, transparency, and a government that truly listens to its people are becoming louder by the day. Imagine the scene on election night. The votes are tallied and the results come in. There's a shift, an unexpected surge in support for the opposition. It's not just a few extra seats, it's a substantial victory. The Workers' Party secures a commanding presence in Parliament. The PSP has a seat at the table. For the first time in decades, the PAP is not in full control. This isn't just a change of leadership, it's the beginning of a new era for Singapore. The political shockwaves would be felt immediately. Singaporeans would be glued to their screens, talking over dinner tables, in offices, and on social media. What does this mean for our future, they'd ask. Some would be filled with hope, excited about the possibility of real change. Others would be anxious, unsure about what this shift means for the stability they've always known. This moment would mark the end of an era and the start of something new. An era where the power dynamic shifts from a single dominant party to a more diverse and competitive political landscape. The shockwave that begins on election night would ripple through every corner of society, from the streets to the boardrooms, as Singaporeans come to terms with a new political reality. And the real question would be, how will the nation adapt? The election results are in. The opposition has won big. Now the real work begins. For those watching closely, this is when the uncertainty kicks in. The feeling in the air is thick with anticipation. On one hand, there's excitement, a sense that change is finally here, that the old political order is being shaken up. But on the other hand, there's anxiety. This is uncharted territory, and the questions are starting to pile up. What happens now? Let's start with the civil service. For decades, the PAP has run a well-oiled machine, with civil servants trained to follow directives from the top down. The government has a track record of consistency, which has been a big part of Singapore's success. But now, that machine is about to face a serious test. With new leaders taking the reins, many civil servants will be wondering how their roles might change. Will the new government keep existing policies? Or will they push for radical reforms? Will there be a shakeup in ministries? How will government-linked companies, GLCs, which are the backbone of Singapore's economy, react to new leadership? The uncertainty isn't just in the public sector. Investors, both local and foreign, are sitting on the edge of their seats. Singapore has built its reputation on being a stable, business-friendly hub. But with a new government comes the possibility of policy shifts that could affect everything from corporate tax rates to foreign investment laws. For businesses already operating here, there's a lot at stake. Will the new administration bring more regulations or reduce red tape? Will they continue Singapore's free market approach? Or will they lean more towards social policies that could change the economic landscape? Take the housing market as an example. Housing prices in Singapore have been a sore point for many citizens. Under the PAP, policies have generally favored high development and private ownership, with an emphasis on economic growth. But with the opposition now in power, housing could become a hot-button issue. We could see immediate reviews of existing policies. Are they truly benefiting the average Singaporean? Or have they become a tool for the rich? Will the new government push for more affordable housing? Could there be a push to curb property speculation? The decisions made in the first days and weeks after the election would set the tone for what's to come. And then there's CPF, Central Provident Fund reform. It's a delicate issue. The PAP has always defended the CPF system as a necessary part of Singapore's social safety net, but there have been calls for reform. Critics argue that the CPF doesn't do enough for retirees, while others say it's too restrictive. With the opposition now in power, we could see a debate about how the system works. Will they find a way to ease the burden on younger Singaporeans while ensuring the elderly aren't left behind? Or will they push for radical changes that could spark public backlash? In the midst of all this, there's one big question on everyone's mind. Can the opposition govern effectively? They've won the election, but will they be able to deliver on their promises? Will internal tensions arise as different factions within the opposition party try to influence policy decisions? And just as importantly, how will the PAP react? Will they gracefully step aside, or will there be an attempt to challenge the new administration behind the scenes? The first few weeks after an opposition victory would be critical. The new government will need to prove they can manage the country without causing chaos. They'll have to navigate the uncertainties of policy changes while maintaining Singapore's reputation as a stable, prosperous nation. It's a tightrope walk, balancing change with stability, and the world will be watching. The big question remains, will they rise to the occasion, or will the cracks begin to show? The next few months could define the future of Singapore's political landscape and the future of the economic ripple. As the dust settles and the new opposition government begins to take charge, one of the biggest immediate concerns is the economic impact. Singapore has long been known for its stability and predictability, which has made it a safe haven for global investors. The smooth-running system, the low levels of corruption, and the pro-business environment have all contributed to Singapore's reputation as an economic powerhouse. But now, with a new party in power, the status quo could be in jeopardy. In the short term, uncertainty is a dangerous thing for the economy. If investors are unsure about the future, they may pull back or hesitate to commit to new ventures. The stock market could experience volatility as traders react to policy shifts. Singapore's financial sector, which depends heavily on stability, could see some turbulence. We might witness temporary dips in share prices, especially in sectors that are sensitive to government regulation, such as real estate, banking, and construction. Foreign investors may also pause their investments until they gain a clearer picture of the direction the new government is heading in. For the everyday Singaporean, this uncertainty can feel like a tightening of the belt. Business expansions could slow down as companies assess the new political environment. Some may even consider moving operations to other countries where political and economic conditions are more predictable. This fear of instability is a natural reaction when change comes, especially when the old guard, who've been the trusted hands behind Singapore's success, is replaced by a new government with an unknown agenda. But it's not all doom and gloom. There is another side to this coin. As Singapore moves towards a more democratic, multi-party system, one potential silver lining is the possibility of a greater emphasis on transparency and accountability. The opposition may push for reforms that increase government oversight, which could appeal to new investors who value democratic maturity and stability. For investors who have long been wary of one-party rule, this shift could make Singapore an even more attractive place to do business, especially for those looking for a stable, transparent political environment. Additionally, a government that prioritizes social welfare and more equitable economic policies could attract socially conscious businesses and investors who align with these values. A greater focus on addressing the needs of the average Singaporean, whether through affordable housing, better healthcare, or job opportunities, could stimulate domestic demand and create new industries. Instead of just relying on foreign capital, there could be an internal growth spurt driven by policies that encourage local entrepreneurship, innovation, and investment. On a global scale, Singapore's role as a regional financial hub could be put to the test. Neighbors like Malaysia and Indonesia, as well as superpowers like China and the United States, may watch closely to see how the new opposition government handles its economic policies. Will Singapore continue to uphold its free market approach, or will it begin to lean towards more protectionist measures? Will trade policies be altered? Will foreign trade agreements be revisited? These questions could affect Singapore's relationships with neighboring countries and its place in the global economy. The key here is timing. While the immediate aftermath of a change in government could bring economic jitters, the long-term effects depend on how the new opposition manages these early challenges. If they can provide clear direction and restore confidence, both within Singapore and globally, there's potential for growth, new partnerships, and even a stronger position on the world stage. But if the new government struggles to communicate its plans or gets bogged down in internal squabbles, Singapore could face an economic slowdown that lasts longer than expected. Investors, businesses, and everyday citizens will need reassurance that the country's economy will remain resilient despite the political changes. At the end of the day, the economic ripple caused by this political shift could be short-term turbulence, or it could lead to a major transformation in how Singapore engages with the world. The potential for both growth and hardship is there, and it's all about how the new leadership manages to steer the ship through these uncharted waters. When the opposition wins big in GE 2025, the world won't just watch, it'll react. The U.S. may see it as a democratic milestone. Singapore has been a trusted partner in the Indo-Pacific. A peaceful transition could boost America's view of Singapore as a mature democracy. But Washington will also be cautious. Will foreign policy change? Will military and trade alignments shift? China, on the other hand, might feel uneasy. Singapore is a key economic player for Beijing. A new government could mean new tones on issues like the South China Sea or Belt and Road. Will Singapore lean more neutral, or will it push back? ASEAN neighbors like Malaysia and Indonesia will monitor closely. Singapore has long been a stable anchor in Southeast Asia. A shift in leadership might affect trade, regional cooperation, and even immigration policies. Will Singapore remain a pillar or become more inward-looking? Global investors will also take note. The first reaction might be caution. Markets dislike unpredictability. But if the new leadership shows competence and stability, it could attract investors hungry for transparency and reform. Singapore's global role as a diplomatic middle ground and economic hub hangs in the balance. Will the opposition continue its legacy of balance and neutrality? Or will a new voice on the global stage create fresh tensions or opportunities? The entire world will be watching, because even small countries can shake the global order. What the opposition might do differently. If the opposition takes power in GE 2025, expect a shift, not a revolution, but a recalibration. They'll likely start with transparency and accountability. Think more open debates in Parliament, more public consultations, and stronger checks on government spending. It's about rebuilding trust and giving people a stronger voice in how the country is run. On housing and cost of living, expect bold reforms. The opposition may revisit public housing prices, push for more affordable rental options, and review how subsidies are distributed. Middle and lower income families could finally feel some relief. Healthcare and retirement might also see changes. Policies could lean towards stronger safety nets, expanding MediShield Life, improving CPF flexibility, and making elder care more accessible. It won't be overnight, but the tone will shift towards social protection. In education, more focus could be placed on mental health, lifelong learning, and reducing the pressure cooker system. Vocational and alternative pathways may be elevated, giving more students options outside of the elite track. Foreign worker policies might tighten too. Opposition voices have long pushed for stronger support for local workers, fair wages, and reducing over-reliance on cheap foreign labor. This could impact sectors like tech and construction, but also open doors for local job seekers. Expect the opposition to be cautious yet assertive, keen to show they can lead without risking stability. Their goal? Prove that change doesn't mean chaos. It means a government that listens, adapts, and puts Singaporeans first. What could go wrong? Change brings hope, but also risk. A sudden shift in power could unsettle Singapore's famously stable system. Investors might get nervous. Global markets, used to predictability, could react with caution. Economic confidence could dip, at least in the short term. The new government may struggle with inexperience. Running a country is different from critiquing one. Implementing big promises while keeping the economy strong is no small task. Public patience could wear thin if delivery is slow. There's also the risk of policy gridlock. If the opposition faces strong resistance from civil servants loyal to the old system, or if Parliament becomes too divided, progress might stall. And then there's public reaction. Not everyone wants change. If expectations aren't met quickly, frustration could turn into protests or even political instability. In short, an opposition win in GE 2025 could open a bold new chapter or a bumpy road of trial and error. It all depends on how prepared they are and how willing Singaporeans are to embrace growing pains. This isn't just speculation. Rising costs, youth discontent, a growing hunger for political diversity. These aren't fringe concerns, they're now mainstream. An opposition surge in GE 2025 no longer unthinkable. The real question is Singapore ready for it? So what do you think? Would an opposition victory bring balance or backlash, progress or problems? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this eye-opening, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more global stories that matter. This is World Without Borders, where headlines